In 2004, in the small city of Grants Pass, Oregon, a 22-year-old woman walked out of a house after an argument with her boyfriend and was never seen alive again. It wasn't the kind of place where people expected something like this to happen. Grants Pass was the kind of town where people still left their doors unlocked sometimes, where everyone knew someone who'd gone to the same small high school, where you could recognize the same faces at the grocery store, at the gas station, at the church on Sunday. Her friends thought she was just blowing off steam. Her boyfriend said she needed space. Her family thought she'd cool down and call in the morning, but the call never came. The text never came. No one ever saw her walking back up that driveway. For years, it was as if she had just evaporated into the Oregon night. Decades later, a small piece of bone found in the woods outside town would finally tell a different story, and the man she trusted most would have to answer for what happened that night. This is the case of a young woman we'll call Emily Carter. She trusted her boyfriend, and for more than 20 years, her family lived with the consequences of that trust. Before we go deeper into Emily's story, a quick note. Some names and identifying details in this video have been changed to protect privacy. The patterns, the red flags, and the lessons are very real. If you care about real cold case stories like this, told with respect for the victims, take a second right now to hit like and subscribe. It helps this channel bring more of these stories to light. Now, let's go back to the beginning, before anyone imagined that Emily could disappear. In 2004, Emily Carter was 22, living in a small rental house on the west side of Grants Pass. She'd grown up in the area, same quiet neighborhoods, same familiar faces, same stretch of gray winter skies and bright summer afternoons along the Rogue River. She wasn't famous. She wasn't on the news. She was just the kind of girl everybody liked. Her co-workers at a small diner off the highway remembered her as the one who always picked up extra shifts when someone was sick. The regulars at the counter said she knew their usual orders by heart. A couple of them still remember how she'd tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear and smile when she was rushing between tables. Her mom remembers something different. She remembers Emily as the girl who still called her after late shifts, just to say she got home safe, the kind of daughter who would stop by with a bag of groceries even when money was tight, because she'd seen something on sale and thought her mom could use it. She wasn't perfect, of course. She'd had a couple of rough years after high school. Nothing dramatic, just that drift a lot of people feel in their early 20s, working different jobs, trying a bit of community college, quitting, going back again, wondering if she should stay in Grants Pass forever or finally go somewhere else. But everyone who knew Emily seemed to agree on one thing. She wanted to believe the best in people, and that included the man she was dating in 2004. His name, for this story, will be Ryan. Ryan was a little older, mid-20s, the kind of guy people in town had different opinions about. Some said he was charming, funny, could talk to anyone. Others quietly said he had a temper, that he could be controlling, that he drank too much on the weekends. Emily met him through mutual friends, not online, not on an app, just the old-fashioned way. A barbecue at someone's place, a group hanging out, talking about nothing in particular. He laughed at her jokes. He asked about her job. He said he admired how hard she worked. For a girl who'd gone through a couple of disappointing relationships, that attention felt nice, safe, special. At first, the relationship looked like any other young couple in a small town. Movie nights with discounted tickets, drives along country roads, with music too loud, dinners at cheap chain restaurants in the next town over. Emily's friends saw the pictures they took on a simple early 2000s camera, grainy, slightly blurry shots of the two of them at the river, at a friend's living room, in a parking lot under orange lights. What her friends didn't see at first were the small changes that started creeping into Emily's life. She stopped saying yes to late-night plans as often. She started saying things like, "Ryan doesn't really like it when I go out without him," but with a little laugh like it wasn't a big deal. She'd show up to work more tired, blaming long talks, long arguments, long nights of sorting things out. To the outside world, though, they were just another couple in a town full of couples, up and down, on and off. Nothing that would make you think one night she'll walk out that door and never walk back in. But there's something people close to Emily remembered later, something that haunts them. In the weeks before she disappeared, she started using a sentence more often. When someone asked how things were going with Ryan, she'd sigh and say, "He's not bad. He just gets angry sometimes. I can handle it." And then she'd add, almost like a reflex, "He doesn't mean it." Those are the kinds of sentences that only sound harmless, until you know how the story ends. By the time the summer of 2004 rolled around, Emily had been dating Ryan long enough that most people assumed they'd either move in together soon or have one ugly breakup and be done. No one imagined that their story would end with missing posters, news clippings, and a cold case file pushed to the back of a drawer. It was a warm evening in late August 2004, the kind of night where the air doesn't cool down as quickly as you'd expect, where the streets still smell faintly of asphalt and dust long after sunset. A friend of Ryan's was having a small get-together just outside town. Not a huge party, more like a handful of people, some beer, a cheap speaker playing early 2000s rock and pop, a backyard full of folding chairs and mismatched lawn furniture. Emily almost didn't go. She'd worked a long double shift at the diner. Her feet hurt, her head hurt. All she really wanted was a shower and sleep. But Ryan kept insisting, "Come on, it'll be good for you. You never come out anymore. Everyone's gonna be there. You're my girlfriend. I want you with me." So she went. She wore something simple, jeans that had faded from 100, washes, a tank top, an old hoodie in case it got cold later. Her hair pulled back the way she usually did when she was tired and didn't want to think too much about it. A couple of people at that gathering would later tell police nearly the same story. At first, things seemed fine. Emily arrived with Ryan. They talked with friends. They had a few drinks. She laughed at a joke someone told about a coworker. She helped carry a bag of chips out from the kitchen. Nothing about her screamed, "I'm in danger." But as the night went on, the mood shifted, just a little, for the people paying close attention. They noticed that Ryan's voice got sharper, that he gripped his drink tighter, that he kept pulling Emily aside, talking close to her face, his words too low for others to hear. At one point, someone saw her flinch when he touched her arm. At another, she walked away from him and stood alone by the fence, staring out at the trees like she wanted to be anywhere else. No one called the police. No one pulled her aside and said, "Hey, do you want a ride home instead?" No one there knew they were watching the last hours Emily Carter would ever be seen clearly again. Sometime after midnight, the argument got louder. Several people remembered that part. Ryan wanted to leave. Emily wanted to stay. Or maybe it was the other way around. Memories conflict. Stories merge. But everyone agrees on one thing. They started fighting in the doorway. Someone heard words like, "always," and "never," and "you don't trust me." Someone heard a chair fall over. Someone else muttered, "They're at it again." Then Ryan said something along the lines of, "Fine, you want to talk? Let's go outside." He grabbed his jacket. Emily followed him, still arguing. They walked out into the dark toward the gravel driveway and the thin line of trees beyond it. A couple of people at the party assumed they were going to sit in the car and calm down. One person glanced out the kitchen window a few minutes later and saw them near the edge of the property, two silhouettes under the faint glow of a distant streetlight. No one saw Emily walk back in. Later, people would struggle to remember exactly when they realized she wasn't there anymore. That's the thing about nights like this. Time blurs. People assume someone's just in the bathroom, just outside on the phone, just catching a ride with someone else. Ryan came back into the house alone. He looked tense but not panicked, irritated but not devastated. When someone asked where Emily was, his answer was dismissive. She needed to cool off. She said she was walking home. Emily's friends would later tell police that didn't sound like her at all. Grants Pass isn't enormous, but it's not the kind of place where you casually walk along dark back roads in the middle of the night in thin shoes, after drinking, with no plan. But at 2 or 3 in the morning, when people are tired and buzzed and thinking more about their ride home than someone else's. Argument. Nobody pressed the issue. Ryan left a little while later, alone. He said Emily would turn up in the morning. She didn't. She wasn't at home when her mom called. She didn't show up at her shift at the diner. She didn't answer the small, simple flip phone she usually kept in her bag for calls and basic messages. By the end of that day, worry had turned into dread, and very quickly the question was no longer, did they break up? It was, where is Emily? When Emily's family reported her missing, the initial response was cautious. It was 2004, a young woman in her early 20s. She had a boyfriend, she had some stress, she'd had arguments, she'd talked before about wanting to get away from everything. Some officers thought maybe she'd left on her own for a few days. Maybe she was staying with a friend. Maybe she was just tired of the drama. But her mom kept repeating the same thing. She wouldn't do this to me. She wouldn't just disappear and not call. She was right. Police retraced what they could of that night. They interviewed the people at the small gathering. They visited the house. They walked the driveway where Emily had last been seen. They searched the stretch of road between the the house and the route she would have taken home. If she'd really chosen to walk, nothing obvious turned up. No discarded clothing, no broken jewelry, no obvious signs of a struggle in the driveway or just beyond. But some people who'd been at the party that night started to feel uneasy about Ryan's behavior. He told slightly different versions of the story depending on who asked. To one person, he said she got dramatic, walked off, and he wasn't going to chase her anymore. To someone else, he said he offered her a ride, but she refused. In one version, he said she told him to leave her alone forever. In another, he said she stormed off down the road. None of those details explain why she never came back. None of them explain why she never used her bank card. Again, why she never reached out to her mom, her friends, her co-workers. As days turned into weeks, the missing posters went up around Grants Pass, black and white photos printed from that simple early 2000s camera, her hair slightly out of place, her smile a little shy but genuine. Have you seen Emily? Last seen leaving a gathering with her boyfriend on date. At the diner, regulars sat at the counter and shook their heads. Some said she'd run off. Others said something much darker out loud. It's always the boyfriend. Police questioned Ryan more than once. He stuck to the same broad story. They argued. She walked away. He let her go because he was tired of fighting. He denied hurting her. He denied following her down the road. He denied driving after her. There was no confession, no clear physical evidence tying him to anything beyond that last known argument. After a while, leads dried up. The file got thicker with notes, but thinner with hope. Years went by. Her mother still called her old number sometimes, even when it no longer worked, just to hear the automated message. She kept her daughter's bedroom mostly the same. The clothes, the pictures, a couple of small items Emily had left behind, like a hair clip on the nightstand. Other people moved on, as people do. New faces came to town. Some older residents eventually forgot the details, remembered only that there had been that girl who went missing years back. But somewhere in a drawer, in a police department file room, there was a folder with Emily's name on it. Photos, interviews, maps with circles drawn on them in red. And about 20 minutes drive from Grants Pass, in a patch of forest that most people never had a reason to visit, there was something else. Something that belonged to Emily. Something that hadn't been found yet. Time has a strange way of changing what matters in a case. In 2004, investigators didn't have the same tools they do now. DNA databases were smaller, genetic. Genealogy wasn't a standard part of cold case work. Old bones, if they were even found, could end up stored for years with no clear answers. Fast forward nearly 2 decades. A new generation of detectives had taken over some of the older files in Grants Pass and the surrounding county. Among them was a detective we'll call Detective Harris, someone who had grown up hearing about these old, unsolved cases and didn't like the idea of leaving them that way. One of the files he pulled was Emily Carter's. He read through the interviews. He looked at the missing posters. He studied the map of where she'd last been seen, where search teams had walked, where dogs had picked up nothing useful. Around the same time, in a different drawer, there was another file. It held the record of human remains, partial, incomplete, that had been found years earlier by a hunter in a wooded area outside Grants Pass. At the time, those remains had been cataloged, photographed, and stored. They hadn't been matched to any known missing person. Back then, all anyone could say for sure was female, young adult, estimated time in the woods, many years. Detective Harris did something important. He connected those two files. He noticed that the time frame fit. The location, while not exactly on Emily's supposed walking route, wasn't so far away that it could be dismissed out of hand. In fact, it was reachable by car in a short drive, especially for someone who knew the back roads and wanted privacy. So he ordered new forensic testing. This time, science had caught up. Specialists extracted DNA from the old bone. They compared it to samples voluntarily given by Emily's surviving family. And slowly, after weeks of waiting for labs and confirmations, an answer came back. The partial remains found in the woods belonged to Emily Carter. For her family, it was a devastating confirmation of something they'd already known in their hearts for years. She hadn't run away. She hadn't started a new life somewhere else. She hadn't simply vanished into thin air. She had died, and someone had left her body out there, alone, among trees and wet soil and falling leaves. Once the remains were matched, the question changed from where is she to who put her there. Detectives went back to the original case file with new urgency. They re-interviewed old witnesses, some now married, moved, or living different lives entirely. They verified who had solid alibis that night and who didn't. They looked, again, at Ryan's statements, at how his story had shifted in small but telling ways. Over the years, a couple of people had come forward with things that had bothered them about him. A comment he'd made at a bar one night about women not knowing their place. A time he'd shown up with scratches on his arms and brushed it off as nothing. A remark about how some people just walk out and never come back, followed by a strange, tense laugh. Those things by themselves are not evidence, but in the context of Emily's remains being found in a remote area, they took on new weight. Detectives reconstructed what could have happened that night, the argument at the party, the walk outside, the chance, or choice, to drive away from that house with her in the car, not toward her home, but out toward the darker, quieter roads leading into the woods. There were still no security cameras out there, no smartphone data records, no clear digital trail. It was 2004 in a small Oregon town, not a city, packed with surveillance, but there were patterns, and sometimes in cold case work, patterns matter. With the new forensic link, the long history of suspicion, and what they now believed about his movements that night, detectives brought Ryan back in, this time not just as a person of interest, but effectively as the prime suspect. He had moved on with his life, moved out of state for a while, then back again, had other relationships, carried on, while Emily's mother carried a grief that never really faded. In the interview room, he denied everything. He said he never went near those woods, that he left Emily at the party, and whatever happened after that wasn't on him. He said the police were trying to pin a tragedy on the nearest easy target. But this time, he wasn't speaking to the same overwhelmed investigators from 2004. He was facing people with better tools, better science, and a much clearer picture of what had likely happened that night. Eventually, with the evidence they had, prosecutors felt they could move forward. Ryan, under his real-life counterpart's name, in the case that inspired this story, was formally charged in connection with the death and disappearance of the woman he'd once called his girlfriend. For many people watching from Grants Pass, the news was shocking, but not surprising. It had always felt unfinished. It had always felt like there was only one person who knew exactly what happened when Emily walked outside that night. Now, finally, he would have to tell his version of the story in a court of law. Emily's story, like so many stories of women who trusted the wrong person, is not just about one bad night. It's about all the little things that came before it. The jokes brushed off as just his temper. The controlling comments disguised as caring. The times she said, "He doesn't mean it," when maybe, deep down, she knew he did. Looking back, people around her see the red flags more clearly. She stopped going out with friends as often. She seemed tired, worn down, quick to defend him even when no one was attacking him. She started taking responsibility for his moods, his anger, his reactions. None of that means she deserved what happened. It means the responsibility is squarely on the person who chose violence, who chose control, who chose to take advantage of trust. But it also means there are things we can learn from stories like this. If you ever find yourself making excuses for someone again and again, if you ever feel smaller, quieter, less yourself because of a relationship, if the people who love you keep saying you've changed, and not in a good way, those are signals worth paying attention to. Emily, in this retelling, is a composite. Her name is changed. Certain details have been adjusted, so we're not putting a spotlight on one real grieving family. But the pattern is painfully real, drawn from more than one cold case, from more than one woman who didn't come home. Somewhere right now there is someone at a small gathering, in a small town, brushing off their partner's anger with a nervous laugh. There is someone walking out into the dark after an argument, trusting that the person who followed them would never truly hurt them. And there is someone else listening to this story who recognizes a piece of their own life in it. If that's you, please talk to someone you trust. A friend, a family member, a counseling service, a hotline in your country. Your story doesn't have to end the way Emily's did. She trusted him. Decades later, the truth refused to stay buried. That's our tagline for this channel. But behind every phrase like that, there's a person, a family, a town that was never the same again. If this story made you think, if it made you more aware of the subtle ways control and danger can creep into a relationship, here's my final request. Please like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and tell me in the comments where you're watching. From what city, what country? The more people see stories like this, the more we can recognize red flags sooner, and maybe, just maybe, prevent another cold case like Emily's. Thank you for watching She Trusted. Cold Cases. Take care of yourselves, and be careful who you trust.